I don't know what to say about this movie. We really gotta end on this one, huh? Hey guys, and welcome back to Access Blockbusters, and welcome back to the Star Wars Re-Examined series, where I am going through all 11 live-action Star Wars films from The Phantom Menace Episode 1 to this Star Wars film, Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. That is right, guys, we have made it to the end. At least of the review portion of this series, as I will be doing more videos after this, so stay tuned on the channel, make sure to subscribe, as I'll be doing video essays, I'll be doing tier lists, I'll be doing rankings, I'll be doing all sorts of different fun things about the Skywalker saga and Rogue One and Solo: A Star Wars Story, so stay tuned on the channel for those videos coming soon. But guys, like I just said, we have wrapped up the reviews or the re-examinations of all 11 films with this film, The Rise of Skywalker, so thank you for your support. It has meant so much to me to hear your guys' thoughts on all of these Star Wars films and to know that, you know what, at the end of the day, it is possible to just look at these films as films and just enjoy them for what they are, which is a part of Star Wars, and Star Wars is something that I love. And so it has been great to do this series. It has been great to just drown out all of the noise, all of the background noise that has been churning and causing divisiveness and just doing all of these messed up things to Star Wars fandom for the past few years, and just watch these films for what they are. At least to me anyways, because like I've said in previous videos, especially the last one, go check out the Last Jedi video, by the way, if you haven't. That's a deep dive into that film, and I talk a lot about what makes Star Wars different for each person, but I'll just reiterate a little bit here and just say that Star Wars is different for all of us because we all grew up differently. We all grew up with different backgrounds, different contexts, in different environments, and we all watched Star Wars a little bit differently. And so that's why I think we all approach Star Wars in a different way. Again, go watch the Last Jedi video. I talk about it a little bit more, but here today, we're here to talk about another film that is a little divisive, although maybe perhaps a little bit more uniformly hated than The Last Jedi, and that is Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. So before we get into it, make sure to subscribe to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel. Again, more content on the way about the Star Wars films. Give this video a like if you liked it. Make sure to comment down below with your thoughts on the film and with your thoughts on the series and what kinds of videos you'd like to see. And yeah, without further ado, it's been 11 films in the making. Let's get started. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. So when this film came out, I remember it was interesting because this is the first time I really distinctly remembering this phenomenon happening. As many of you might know, when a film comes out, it usually premieres in LA or in Hollywood, and they have this big red carpet and all the stars come out and all of these other actors and famous celebrities come out and they all watch the film in a theater, and that's where the first social media reviews come out. Or at least little reactions. And what the critics will do, the critics who attend the premiere, is they'll watch the movie with everyone else, see it for the first time, and then go on Twitter and tweet maybe one or two tweets about the film and just talk about them, in little vague terms, right? Like Thor: Love and Thunder, fun, quirky, maybe disappointing. So it was interesting because with The Last Jedi, the critic reactions were actually very positive coming out of the premiere, and it turns out the Rotten Tomatoes score was also very positive. Critics seemed to really like The Last Jedi. Now fans, I know, was a different story, but at least for the critics, they seemed to really like the film. So going into The Rise of Skywalker, we knew that Palpatine was coming back. That was announced, I believe, at Star Wars Celebration or D23, one of those two. We knew he was coming back. We didn't know why, but, I had assumed, give Lucasfilm the benefit of the doubt, there probably was some kind of reason as to why in this story. Okay. And we saw a few trailers and we heard his voice and it was kind of cool. We got to see different parts of the action. We got to see Rey training. We got to see little bits of Leia. Carrie Fisher had passed away, I believe, right before Episode 8 came out. So we knew that they were going to reuse footage from those films. And I mean, I was a little hesitant about that. I was a little worried, but hey, it looked like it worked. They looked confident about it. So you know what? Give them the benefit of the doubt. And we went into the premiere. And so I waited for the premiere to end and the social media embargo lifted and the reactions came out. And the first reactions, I remember this, by the way, very distinctly, were positive. We're actually very positive. A lot of the critics said, hey, this is a great ending to the Skywalker saga. It's a very fun film. It's a very fulfilling film. It wraps up the 9 films very well. Very exciting. And I looked at those reactions and I went, okay, well, it looks like they did it. It looks like they really wrapped up the trilogy nicely after all the divisiveness of The Last Jedi. But unlike The Last Jedi, when the actual critic review embargo lifted, and this is the actual reviews, not just the social media reactions, the critic reaction was actually pretty negative. I believe that The Rise of Skywalker has under a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. It just didn't match what I thought and perceived from the critic reactions. And that was really interesting, especially considering how positive some of the reactions were. Some of them, and perhaps this is part of the under 50% who really liked the film, at least on Rotten Tomatoes, were saying that this is one of the best Star Wars films ever made. I remember this. So going into the film the first time, I had somewhat lowered expectations, but still pretty high. And I'm going to tell you what, the first time I watched the film, 2019, I thought it was fine. I admitted there were some pretty bad parts in it, and there were some things that I didn't like, but when I first saw the film, and perhaps this was just me really trying to like the film, or perhaps I just legitimately really liked the film the first time, I had a good time. Now, a lot of people didn't, and I remember a lot of my friends didn't. That's totally fine. But again, I remember walking out of the film, walking into the theater saying, okay, well, I think that was pretty okay. Now, unfortunately, The Rise of Skywalker is a film that the more you look at it, the worse it gets. And it's kind of a similar thing with The Force Awakens in that the harder you look, the closer you squint, the more holes and the more flaws that you can kind of pick out with the film like The Rise of Skywalker. And I don't know if this is J.J. Abrams or I don't know what the deal is here, but yeah, it's very similar to The Force Awakens in that way, in that you can really tell the longer the films marinate in pop culture. And now it's been a few years since The Rise of Skywalker, and well, let's talk about what I thought on the rewatch. The dead speak is how the film starts in the opening crawl, and I mean, a lot of people think this is a really dumb line. For what it's worth, it doesn't really matter to me. It's not that dumb, but it is a little jarring for sure, but I think it's okay. But I will admit, the first few minutes of The Rise of Skywalker, I actually quite like, still, to this day. I think Kylo Ren just being so angry, and I believe the planet is Mustafar that he's on, looking for the Sith Wayfinder. Just being so angry and battling all these people, I think it's a really cool scene, actually. And then him going to Exegol, the design of Exegol is great. I love the design. And him meeting Palpatine, I think the basic premise of Sidious saying, every voice you have heard in your head has been me, I think that works on a base level. It kind of doesn't work as well when you see Snoke in a jar. Hashtag Snoke's in a jar is a Disney Plus series that I'd love to see, Snoke's in a jar. But anyways, that kind of takes you out of it for a second. You go, oh, the whole mystery of who is Snoke, it's just some thing that was built in a jar. Like, okay, sure. But again, I maintain that the first maybe 10 or so minutes, basically everything in the preamble, the little prologue there, I think that stuff works really well. I think that Palpatine is suitably creepy. I think that everything about the whole lab situation, that you have this sort of Frankenstein's monster of Palpatine, and you have Kylo Ren just so angry at something that could threaten his power. I think that it all works, honestly. Then we move into a chase scene that I also think is fine. I think that it actually has some pretty exciting action. Poe and Finn are trying to get this information from a spy in the First Order. And there's a Millennium Falcon chase, which is, classic. And I mean, the light speed hopping thing, there are some moments in there where you can tell how CGI it is, but other moments it looks pretty okay. And honestly, I'm cool with it. It looks fine. And then we have Rey training with Leia. And now, this is where I'm of two minds of this, but look. Understanding that J.J. Abrams, I fully believe he and Kathleen Kennedy, the president of Lucasfilm, I believe that they loved Carrie Fisher. I mean, didn't we all? I just rest in peace, Carrie Fisher. We loved her as Princess Leia. I believe that they wholeheartedly were trying to honor her legacy by using the reused footage for Princess Leia in Episode 9 because they believed that Carrie Fisher, would be the one to finish out the saga. So on the one hand, I can't say anything there because I understand. They were caught between a rock and a hard place. On the other hand, it's clear now, rewatching the film, that Leia's role is really quite significant, and they just were not able to cover the amount of scenes and the amount of story that they were able to with the limited dialogue that they had in archived footage and the reused face footage that they had as well. It's clear that Leia is meant to be a Jedi Master in this movie, and she just doesn't come off that way. She just kind of comes off as Rey's chaperone in these training sequences because she can't say anything because they don't have the dialogue to do it. So, I mean, hindsight is always 20/20, but still, I would have maybe liked to have recast Leia. I feel like if the story was this big and Carrie Fisher's legacy was to be carried on in this way, I feel like it would have just been better to have seen the story come to a completion in that way. That's just me. But again, they did it that way. And so it feels as though Leia being a Jedi and Leia being a Jedi Master, clearly a big point of importance in this film, is kind of just brushed over very quickly. But then now they have to go look for Exegol and they have to go look for the Sith Wayfinder. And I will admit, it's fun seeing the trio together, Poe, Finn, and Rey, although it feels like we skipped a couple movies because they have this camaraderie, which we didn't get to see in Episode 7 because it was just Finn and Rey and Poe was out somewhere else. He was dead for half the film. And then in Episode 8 was, it was Poe and Finn, but Poe and Finn weren't really together for most of the film, and Rey was off doing her own thing. So just kind of seeing the three of them together, they have good chemistry for sure, but it just doesn't quite feel earned the same way it did for Luke, Han, and Leia, but obviously they were together basically the whole time in Episode 4, and then not as much in 5, but they were back together in 6, so it made some more sense. It feels like a lot of things just aren't quite earned, and I mean, that's one instance where I might believe that J.J. Abrams kind of inputted his own vision of what his episode 8 would have been, and then just carried it on to his episode 9. I don't know that though. I'm not trying to say anything, but yeah. So they head off to this planet called Pisana, and they find Lando. Why? What? Why? I mean, technically, from a story perspective, he went off with Luke Skywalker and they were looking for the dagger, and then he decided to stay on the planet. Like, fine, I get that. I get it logically. But it is just so random that he just shows up in the middle of the story and he's like, yep, I'm here now because we have to get every single person from the original cast to just show up for some kind of role in this sequel trilogy. Okay. So then there's this chase sequence and they get stuck in quicksand and Finn is trying to tell Rey he's force sensitive, which comes out of nowhere. Because it really does come out of nowhere. I don't even believe it was set up in episode 7 at all. I mean, I believe it could have been a very cool thing that was developed throughout the sequel trilogy, but I just didn't see any setup for it at all. So it's just a really random thing to include in this film. Although something that I wish would have been set up and would have been explored, because that would have been really cool. And they find the dagger. And by the way, I have to say, side note here. So C-3PO is with them, and he's basically used as comic relief throughout most of this film, although he has an important role to play, obviously, in reading the dagger. But everyone's just so brutally mean to C-3PO. It's just, I don't know, it's kind of funny. But it's funny in the way of like, why is everyone mean to C-3PO? Not actually, it's funny and the jokes are funny. Some of them are, admittedly. Some of the C-3PO jokes are pretty funny, but you know. And then Rey kind of blows up a transport ship that had Chewie on it, but it doesn't, because 30 seconds later it's revealed he's alive, and okay, Force lightning as well, cool. So then they go to a planet called Kijimi, and they have to basically extract the information from C-3PO. They have to reset him. This feels like a bigger deal, or it should have been a bigger deal, but C-3PO also comes back later in the movie, which is crazy. That's the second almost death in this movie, but that wasn't actually a death. And they board Ren's ship because the dagger's there and Chewie's there, and Rey finds out she's a Palpatine. Also, Hux is a spy, but it's not worth the time, honestly. So, okay, Rey being a Palpatine. Again, and this is the theme with The Rise of Skywalker. It could have worked. It absolutely could have worked, but it needed to have been set up. And in fact, it wasn't set up. Nothing in this film that happens is earned because nothing in this film had been set up previously. Not even really in The Force Awakens, J.J. Abrams' other Star Wars film. So Rey being the granddaughter of Palpatine and them kind of fudging the whole backstory that Kylo Ren gave in The Last Jedi, it's fine. I mean, it's not fine, but I mean, for the purposes of this movie, it's fine. It just doesn't feel earned. So then they find the wreckage of the Death Star, and this whole thing of the dagger perfectly aligning is one of the dumbest things in Star Wars. And it's at this point in the movie that I'm getting a little bit annoyed at all of these things that are adding up here. I mean, Babu Frick, he saved the film, but he's not in the movie anymore until the very end. And Rey sees this vision of herself with a double-bladed red lightsaber, and it's basically the same thing as Luke's cave vision, which is from Empire Strikes Back. Remember that movie? It's a good movie. Again, at this point in the film, I'm getting a little bit annoyed. And then Kylo Ren shows up and destroys that one wayfinder, and they have this. Honestly, it's a really lame lightsaber fight because nobody cares what happens here. I mean, like, nobody actually believes anything bad is going to happen. Even when Rey stabs Kylo Ren, you think for a split second the first time you see the movie that, oh, maybe he's dead? But of course he's not. Because just like with Chewbacca and just like with C-3PO, he comes back 10 seconds later. And this is how Leia dies, just kind of calling out her son's name, and then she dies. And that, again, it's just one of those things where I feel like a recast would have helped a lot to really finish Carrie Fisher's legacy and bring it home. But again, what can I say? I do like the Han Solo memory scene. It feels very reminiscent of Man of Steel, which I believe Chris Terrio, who wrote the film, also wrote. Or rather, Batman v Superman, I believe, where there's Clark Kent and he has this vision of his dad. So I guess copy yourself if you want. And now everyone's feeling hopeless, and Rey goes to Octu, and Luke Skywalker catches the lightsaber and makes a joke about The Last Jedi. This is no way to treat a Jedi's weapon or something. In all seriousness, though, I mean, a lot of people take that as a direct jab to The Last Jedi. I mean, it very well could be. It might be. But again, I choose to look at this as Luke Skywalker having completed his arc from the beginning of The Last Jedi to now going back to being a full-on Jedi and Force user now and respecting the Jedi's weapon. I choose to see it as a completion of his arc rather than him just, I don't know, J.J. Abrams sticking the middle finger up to Rian Johnson. But again, I don't know what it is. And guess what? Leia has a lightsaber! Yay! And now we begin the last part of the film. And I mean, Ben Solo is now redeemed somewhat, I guess, by his memory father. And there's a bunch of Star Destroyers that can also kill planets. This is literally the 4th Star Wars film out of the last 6 that have planet-destroying weapons in them in the finale, and I hate it. It's too much at this point. I will say, though, the action in the finale is really great. It's some of the best space battling in any of the Star Wars films, for sure. I just wish it came in a better story, but it is still very cool to look at. Until you have space horses on the Star Destroyer, and then you're kind of brought back to Earth, but still. And then Rey confronts Palpatine, and okay, this is just another huge problem with this movie, because the entire movie, Palpatine was asking Kylo Ren to kill Rey because she would be a threat to his power, and he knew that she was a Palpatine. And now, at the end of the movie, he asks her to kill him because he needs to, I don't know, transfer himself or all the Sith into her so she can ascend the throne. But why did he want her dead the entire movie? It doesn't make sense. You know what else doesn't make sense is the fact that he says, if you kill me, then all the Sith go in you, and she kills him. I mean, she deflects lightning back in his face, which, I mean, but that's killing. Who makes the rules? Why doesn't that constitute her killing him? Like, who in the Force made that rule? It doesn't make any sense. And then Kylo Ren and Rey kiss. It doesn't make sense. Nothing was set up about this. Nothing. And then Ben dies. And Rey's a Skywalker, and she has a new lightsaber, and the movie's over. Okay, look. It sounds like from this review that this is probably the movie that I hated the most. If you've seen all 11 reviews, it sounds like this is the movie I hated the most. Here's what I will say, transitioning into how I think about this film now compared to before. I actually do think of it in a pretty similar way. Because maybe while the problems this time around were accentuated, and I definitely noticed a lot more problems, and I was really annoyed at a lot of them, I will say this. Just as a movie experience, just sitting down to watch something for 2 hours or 2.5 hours or however long it is a fine movie. It works as a film, an individual film with an A, B, C act structure, 3-act structure. And on that level, it has lightsaber fights, it has space battles, it has Chewbacca, it has dark side, light side, the Force. It does work on that level. I will say that. And on that level, if you just ignore everything and you ignore all the problems, you ignore all the Star Warsiness, it is a film that actually does hold up okay. It is watchable. If you actually saw one of the very first videos that I uploaded, I called it Why Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is the worst Star Wars movie. Not the worst Star Wars movie, but the worst Star Wars movie. And what I meant by that is that the film itself is a movie that is watchable, but it's really when you start looking at all the Star Wars elements that don't make sense that make it a very bad film. And I stand by that. This entire review was basically a rant about all the things that I hated about the movie, and there are just so many things that annoy me and bother me so much, but at the end of the day, it's fine. It's watchable. It's not great. It is absolutely not great, but it's watchable. And it's because a lot of the actors are great actors and they're giving great performances, despite some weird material, including Adam Driver, Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, Oscar Isaac, even Ian McDiarmid. So while I can say this is absolutely not my favorite Star Wars movie, and while there are a lot of things I don't like about it, it's a movie. Anyways, guys, that will do it. That will wrap up the re-examinations of all 11 live-action Star Wars films. Thank you for joining me on this journey, but like I said, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you give this video a like because we are not done yet. We still have to rank all of the films. We still have to make tier lists. We still have to make video essays. We still have to talk about all these films in depth, so stay tuned to the channel for that. Make sure to subscribe again. And let me know how you like this series. Let me know which one was your favorite. Comment down below. And all the videos, they're in a playlist on my YouTube channel. I really appreciate your guys' support on this series. It's meant so much to me. It's been so much fun to make after the Infinity Saga Rewatch series. This has just been so great. And thank you guys again so much for watching, for supporting, for all of your love and support. And I will see you guys in the next one.